Good evening. Elvis Presley died today. He was 42. Apparently it was a heart attack. He was found at his home in Memphis, not breathing. His road manager tried to revive him. He failed. A hospital tried to revive him. It failed. His doctor pronounced him dead at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
August 16th, 1977, the king of rock and roll was found unresponsive in his Graceland mansion. But what really happened in those final, haunting minutes? Behind the glittering fame, the screaming. Fans and the larger-than-life persona, Elvis Presley was spiraling and no one knew just how far. He'd fallen. Was it just a tragic end to a legendary life? Or was there something darker at play? The unreleased details, whispered rumors, and chilling accounts from those closest to him paint a disturbing picture of the king's last hours. Stay with us, because this isn't the story you've heard before. This is the unraveling of a legend, minute by minute, until the final breath that shocked the world. In the days leading up to his death, Elvis wasn't the icon the world remembered. He was exhausted, bloated, and battling inner demons far away from the flashing cameras to the point friends and staff. At Graceland noticed something was off, but no one could have predicted what was coming. On that fateful morning, Elvis retreated to the bathroom and never came out alive. But here's where things get strange. Some reports claim the timeline doesn't add up, while others say key people acted suspiciously. And then there are the medications that raise more questions than answers. Was this truly a tragic accident? Or was the king hiding something far more dangerous? Stay with us, because what you're about to hear might change everything you thought you knew about Elvis. Presley's final moments. The final hours inside Elvis Presley's last day alive. It's the early morning of August 16, 1977, and inside Graceland, the most famous home in America next to the White House, the king of rock and roll wasn't asleep. He was pacing, restless, and clearly uneasy. He was scheduled to fly out later that day to kick off a new string of concerts. This was supposed to be a comeback of sorts, but instead of resting, Elvis was wound tight, exhausted, but wired, like a man whose body couldn't keep up with the pressure mounting inside him. Now, we know from Ginger Alden, who was his fiancée, and also the last person to see him alive, that Elvis wasn't himself that night. Ginger was just 20 years old at the time, decades younger than Elvis, and though she'd been living inside this world of luxury and excess, nothing could have prepared her for what she witnessed in those final hours. Elvis had spent most of the night in his room, secluded, as he often was in the final years. He wasn't the vibrant, hip-shaking heartthrob fans remembered from his Hollywood days. In private, Elvis had become more withdrawn, paranoid, moody, and, most noticeably, very sick. He was battling a long list of health issues, including hypertension, chronic insomnia, liver damage, severe constipation, and an enlarged colon, just to name a few. His eyesight was getting worse. His skin had lost its glow. His speech was sometimes slurred, and he'd gained a significant amount of weight. Elvis wasn't just unwell, he was in physical decline, and everyone close to him knew it. But the thing was, very few people actually did anything about it. Over the years, he had built an inner circle famously known as the Memphis Mafia, who handled everything from his money to his security, his errands, and even his prescriptions. Elvis also had a personal physician, Dr. George "Nick" Nicopolis, who had reportedly written him thousands of prescriptions over the years. Elvis had pills to wake up, pills to go to sleep, pills to ease pain, and more pills to fix the side. Effects of the other pills. It was a full-on pharmaceutical circus, and Elvis was stuck in the middle of it. However, this particular night, something felt different. According to Ginger, Elvis had been on the bathroom floor earlier that evening trying to read a book titled The Scientific Search for the Face of Jesus. That alone is a chilling detail. A man at the end of his rope, reading about religion and mortality in the middle of the night, it almost feels like a foreshadowing he was aware of but couldn't say out loud. By 2 a.m., Elvis was still awake. He and Ginger had spent some time talking, and when she told him to try and get some sleep, he said he couldn't, that he needed to use the bathroom first. She remembers him saying, "I'm going to the bathroom to read. I won't be long." Sadly, those would be the last words he'd ever say to her. Hours passed, and Ginger drifted off to sleep. The house stayed eerily quiet. No one checked in, not even the staff or bodyguards, because they were used to Elvis's strange sleeping hours, so nothing seemed off. Around 2 p.m., nearly 12 hours later, Ginger woke up and immediately knew something was wrong. The bathroom door was still closed. There was no sound, no movement, so she walked up to the door and knocked. No response. She pushed open the door, and that's when she found him. Elvis was lying face down on the floor, unresponsive. He was wearing only a pair of pajamas, bottoms. His body was stiff, and he wasn't breathing. Ginger screamed and panic erupted through the mansion. His longtime associate, Joe Esposito, rushed in, and paramedics were called, but it was too late. When medical personnel arrived at Baptist Memorial Hospital, Elvis was officially pronounced dead at 3:30 p.m. The public would later be told that he died of a heart attack, cardiac arrhythmia, to be precise, but as more details started to leak, slowly, suspiciously, many began to wonder if that was the whole truth. Toxicology reports showed that Elvis had significant levels of several medications in his system: codeine, morphine, diazepam, and others. It was a cocktail that, even alone, could be deadly, and it wasn't the first time either. There had been previous health scares, overdoses, and close calls that had all been swept under the rug, but this time there was no denying it, because Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was gone. Yet, to this day, there's debate over if the people around him failed him or whether he simply refused to be saved. Ginger has spoken out sparingly about that day. In interviews, she recalls the haunting silence, the shock of seeing his lifeless body, the disbelief that the man she loved was gone in an instant, and what makes it even more sad was Elvis didn't need to pass that way because there were warning signs. There were opportunities to intervene, but instead, the people around him tiptoed around the issue, too afraid to confront the truth, too loyal or too dependent on his fame to stop the free fall. The real shock wasn't just that Elvis died, it was how he died and who may have helped cover it up. The autopsy would reveal far more than anyone expected. Behind the curtain, the autopsy, Dr. Nick, and the controversy over Elvis's death. After the shocking news of Elvis Presley's death on August 16, 1977, the world was left stunned. However, while fans grieved, a more complex and troubling narrative began to emerge behind the scenes, one that would forever alter the final chapter of the King's life. The initial autopsy report cited cardiac arrhythmia as the cause of death, but subsequent toxicology findings revealed a significant presence of prescription medications in his system, specifically a cocktail of 14. Substances were identified with 10% in substantial quantities, including codeine, morphine, diazepam, also known as Valium, and other potent sedatives and painkillers. The levels of these medications weren't just high. Some were dangerously elevated and others were within therapeutic range, so this wasn't just the occasional pill for a headache. This was a full stop. Blown pharmaceutical storm brewing inside his body. Now, you have to understand, this wasn't exactly a secret among Elvis's inner circle. He had been on prescription meds for years, using them to battle everything from chronic pain and insomnia to anxiety and his numerous health problems. But what this autopsy showed was that his dependency had spiraled way out of control, to the point where these medications likely played a huge role in his heart failure. But behind every pill was a signature, and behind that signature was a man whose name would become forever linked to Elvis's downfall, raising questions no one wanted to answer. Dr. George Nicopolis, or, as he was famously known, Dr. Nick, was Elvis's personal physician for many years. He was the man who prescribed all the medicines Elvis needed, or at least the ones Elvis was taking. He was very close to Elvis, and Elvis trusted by him. He walked the fine line between doctor and confidant, but what started as a professional relationship quickly became a lightning rod for criticism. After Elvis's death, Dr. Nick came under intense scrutiny, as the media painted him as the doctor who enabled Elvis's addiction. Critics said he handed out prescriptions like candy, fueling the king's substance dependency rather than trying to help him overcome it. Courtrooms and medical boards got involved, and an investigation was launched, not only into the circumstances surrounding Elvis's death, but also into Dr. Nick's prescribing habits. Reports began to emerge that Dr. Nick had prescribed thousands of doses to Elvis over the years, sometimes multiple prescriptions at the same time, for sedatives, stimulants, painkillers, and more. Now the question on everyone's lips became, how could a doctor allow this to happen? And shouldn't he have intervened sooner? The public also wondered if he was complicit in what turned into a fatal addiction. But of course, Dr. Nick defended himself fiercely. He claimed he was simply trying to manage a very sick man's pain and symptoms. He argued that Elvis was a demanding patient who often resisted treatment or tried to obtain medications from other doctors and sources. Dr. Nick insisted he was trying to do what he could, given the circumstances. He also claimed to have attempted to reduce Presley's dependency, including using placebo pills, but the damage was done. And legal battles followed. Dr. Nick was eventually disciplined by the Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners. He was stripped of his medical license for a couple of years, largely due to concerns about his prescription practices, not just with Elvis, but with other patients too. Despite this, years later, he remained a controversial figure with some fans and colleagues, remembering him as the loyal doctor who did what he could in impossible circumstances, but others still saw him as a symbol of everything wrong with the medical enabling that contributed to Elvis's tragic end. Meanwhile, the Presley family was determined to protect Elvis's legacy. They worked hard to keep the worst details of his prescription use and health decline out of the public eye, often clashing with journalists and investigators eager to dig deeper. At the same time, conspiracy theories about Elvis's death exploded. Was he really dead? Or did Dr. Nick help cover something up? Elvis Lives, unpacking the myths and the culture behind the conspiracy theories. Ever since the news broke that Elvis Presley had died back in 1977, whispers and wild theories started to bubble up from the shadows. It wasn't long before the Elvis is alive rumors took hold, turning into one of the most famous conspiracy theories in pop culture history. Let's start with the basics. The story goes something like this. Elvis, overwhelmed by the pressures of fame, personal demons and health issues, supposedly staged his own death to escape the relentless spotlight. According to believers, the king vanished quietly, living out his days in secret, somewhere far away. Sometimes it's claimed he moved to a small town, sometimes that he's hiding right here in the States, maybe even under a new identity, and sure, there have been countless reported sightings of Elvis over the decades, with fans swearing they saw him in diners, airports, or at concerts. However, one of the reasons these conspiracy theories grabbed hold so fiercely is because Elvis wasn't just any celebrity. He was practically immortal in the eyes of his fans, and when someone like that disappears, it's almost impossible to process, and the inconsistencies around his cause of death fed into the rumors. Firstly, the official autopsy took some time to release, then the details about his health and the medications in his system were not widely known at first, creating a vacuum where speculation could thrive. Some fans were skeptical about the timeline or the reports of who was present at Graceland when he died. These gaps gave conspiracy theorists plenty of room to fill in their own versions of the story. There's also the role of the media in all this. Sensational headlines and endless speculation created a frenzy that fueled the myth-making. Tabloids had a field day with Elvis cited. Stories, often based on nothing more than blurry photos or eyewitness accounts that didn't hold up. Under scrutiny, but those stories sold papers and grabbed attention, keeping Elvis in the news long. After his death, the fan culture around Elvis is another huge factor. His followers didn't just admire him, they felt deeply connected, almost like family. Fans want closure, but they also crave hope. So the idea that Elvis is still out there gave them something to hold on to, a way to keep the king's spirit alive. It's less about facts and more about emotional survival. These theories also reflect a broader fascination we have with celebrity and mortality. When famous people die young or, tragically, it disrupts our sense of order. It reminds us that no matter how powerful or beloved, they were still humans and vulnerable. So, the myths about Elvis faking his death can be seen as a defense mechanism, our way of wrestling with uncomfortable realities. Interestingly, Elvis isn't the only star to attract this kind of speculation. From Jim Morrison to Tupac Shakur, several legendary musicians have conspiracy theories around their deaths, but Elvis's case stands out because of how early and intense the rumors began. It's almost as if the public refused to let go from the very start. Psychologists would point out that these conspiracy theories tap into something called open loops, unresolved questions and mysteries that our brains want to solve. The less certain we are about an event, the more our minds fill in the blanks. So in Elvis's case, the gaps in official accounts and the powerful emotional investment of his fans created the perfect storm for a never-ending mystery. It's also worth mentioning that Elvis himself played with mystique during his life. He cultivated a persona that was part mystery, part fantasy. The flashy costumes, the private lifestyle, the rare, public appearances, all of it added layers that made him larger than life. So, it's no surprise that fans projected that aura onto his death, imagining that even in death, he could outsmart the world. On a cultural level, these conspiracy theories reveal our complicated relationship with fame. We want celebrities to be real, but also extraordinary. Immortal, but relatable. The Elvis faked death. Myth blurs the line between reality and fantasy in a way that fits perfectly with the way we consume. Celebrity stories. It's part tragedy, part fairy tale, but the thing is, while these stories are entertaining and sometimes comforting, they also risk overshadowing the real person behind the legend. Elvis Presley was a hugely talented artist who struggled with very real problems. His death, tragic and messy, was a human moment, not a Hollywood plot twist. In the end, the persistence of these conspiracy theories says a lot about us as much as it does about Elvis. What's truly fascinating is how the world found out even in a time long before smartphones or social media. The world mourns, media frenzy, funeral spectacle, and Elvis's lasting impact. In an era when word traveled slower than today, the demand for information was immediate and ravenous. Television networks interrupted regular programming to air special bulletins. Radio stations played Elvis's greatest hits back to back, turning his music into a soundtrack for grief. In homes, diners, and clubs across America and beyond, conversations stopped as people processed the unbelievable news. Could the king really be gone? Fans responded in waves of disbelief and heartbreak. The days that followed saw an outpouring of emotion unlike any before or since. Thousands made their way to Graceland, the sprawling mansion in Memphis that had been Elvis's sanctuary and home. People stood in lines that stretched for blocks, waiting to pay their respects, many clutching flowers, photographs, or homemade signs. It felt less like a funeral and more like a pilgrimage. The funeral itself became a historic event, not just for Elvis, but for pop culture. It was held on August 18th, just 2 days after his death, and the service was packed with family, friends, celebrities, and countless fans. The media presence was massive, with journalists from all over the world flocking to Memphis to cover every detail. Graceland was transformed into a stage for mourning, and the atmosphere was heavy with sadness, mixed with a sense of disbelief. Inside the funeral chapel, there was an intimacy that contrasted with the sheer scale of the public mourning. Elvis was laid out in a gold coffin, dressed in one of his signature jumpsuits, complete with the flashy rhinestones and bold colors that defined his stage presence. His face looked peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos his death had unleashed outside. For those close to him, it was a moment of final farewell. For the world watching, a closing chapter in a story that seemed too big for any one person. One of the most memorable moments of the funeral was the music. Instead of somber hymns, the ceremony featured some of Elvis's own songs, creating an emotional link between his life and his. Legacy, friends, and family shared stories, some funny, some emotional, that painted a picture of Elvis not just as a superstar, but as a son, a friend, and a man who had battled his demons in private. Outside the chapel, the crowd was electric with grief and admiration. Thousands of fans lined the streets, some crying, others singing his songs, and many simply standing in stunned silence. It was clear that Elvis had touched lives in a way few artists ever do. The funeral procession itself was a spectacle. Hundreds of cars accompanied the hearse as it made its way to the meditation garden at Graceland, where Elvis was laid to rest. Fans lined the route, waving banners and holding candles. The mood was surreal. It was a blend of mourning and a sense of being part of history. In the weeks and months that followed, Elvis's death sent ripples through the music industry. Many artists and fans felt the loss deeply because Elvis wasn't just a musician. He was a trailblazer who changed the sound and style of popular music forever. Suddenly, his hits gained new meaning. Each lyric and note is a reminder of a life cut short. Music executives scrambled to capitalize on the renewed interest in Elvis, releasing unreleased tracks and compilations, but the cultural impact went beyond just album sales. His death sparked conversations about the pressures of fame, the dangers of prescription dependency, and the challenges faced by stars behind the scenes. The King's struggles became a cautionary tale for the industry. Moreover, Elvis's death influenced how pop culture viewed celebrity mortality. Before Elvis, stars seemed almost untouchable beings who lived forever in the spotlight, but after his passing, there was a collective reckoning with the fact that fame doesn't guarantee happiness or health. It humanized the celebrity experience in a new way. Even decades later, Elvis Presley remains a cultural touchstone. His death didn't diminish his legend, it amplified it. From tribute acts and documentaries to films and countless biographies, Elvis's life and tragic end continue to captivate and inspire. His influence is woven into the fabric of music history and American culture. In the end, the way the media covered Elvis's death, the massive turnout at his funeral, and the cultural shifts that followed paint a vivid picture. It's a story of loss, love, and legacy. A reminder that even the biggest stars face the same fragile human moments as the rest of us, and maybe that's why, even now, people can't stop talking about Elvis Presley and the incredible life and death of the man they called the King. Even as the world mourned, something extraordinary began to take shape, because Elvis didn't just leave behind memories, he left behind a legacy that would only grow louder with time. Elvis's enduring legacy, from revolutionary music to Graceland's global icon status. When you talk about Elvis Presley, you're not just talking about some guy who sang some catchy tunes. You're talking about a man who rewrote the rules of music, challenged the status quo, and basically changed the entire landscape of American culture. Elvis didn't just dabble in rock and roll, he defined it. His unique blend of country, gospel, and rhythm and blues created a sound that was electric and impossible to ignore. From his first single, That's All Right, to iconic hits like Jailhouse Rock and Suspicious Minds, Elvis brought a raw energy and charisma that made him a phenomenon, not just a singer. What's really fascinating is how Elvis managed to break down barriers at a time when racial segregation was the norm in America. His music blurred the lines between black and white audiences. He brought traditionally African-American sounds to mainstream white America, making rock and roll a unifying force. That's why he's often called the King of Rock and Roll, because he didn't just ride the wave, he created it. His style, his moves, even his rebellious attitude set the stage for generations of musicians who came after him. The traces of himself he left in every corner of Graceland, turned the mansion into a monument and a home into history. Now, fast forward a few decades, and Elvis's home, Graceland, has become much more than just a mansion. It's a shrine, a pilgrimage site, a place where fans from all over the world come to pay tribute to the king. Every year, hundreds of thousands of visitors make the trek to Memphis, Tennessee, to walk the halls where Elvis lived, to see his famous jungle room, his collection of flashy jumpsuits, and even the spot where he took his last breath. It's kind of wild to think that a house could become such a cultural landmark, but Graceland is exactly that. The significance of Graceland goes beyond just being a tourist attraction. It's a living museum that captures the essence of Elvis's life, the highs, the lows, and the complex personality behind the superstar image. Walking through the rooms, you get a glimpse of a man who was larger than life, but also human, with all the struggles and dreams that come with that. For many fans, visiting Graceland is a deeply emotional experience, a way to connect with Elvis's legacy on a personal level, but keeping a place. Like Graceland, running and preserved is no small feat. After Elvis passed, his estate was left in the hands of his father, Vernon Presley, and later his daughter, Lisa Marie Presley. Managing the estate has been a long, complicated journey that at one point, the family was in serious financial trouble. However, in the early 1980s, Graceland opened to the public, and it quickly became a massive hit. The estate transformed from a private home into a booming business, generating millions of dollars each year through tours, merchandise, and licensing deals. Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis's only child, has played a key role in maintaining and protecting her father's legacy. She's been deeply involved in decisions about how the estate operates and how Elvis's image is used. It's a balancing act of honoring the memory of the king while making sure his brand stays relevant and respected. She's also navigated the challenges of fame herself, with the Presley name carrying enormous weight and expectations. Beyond Lisa Marie, other family members and professionals have contributed to running the estate smoothly. Over the years, there have been legal battles, business deals, and careful planning to ensure that Elvis's legacy continues to thrive. The estate's management isn't just about money, it's about preserving the history and cultural impact of one of the most influential artists ever. Graceland itself has expanded beyond just the mansion. Today, the complex includes museums, exhibits, and even an entertainment venue, all designed to give visitors a full Elvis experience. They showcase everything from his movie career to his influence on fashion and music. This expansion helps keep Elvis's story alive for new generations who might not have lived through the original rock and roll revolution, but are eager to understand its roots. What's also interesting is how the Presley estate has handled Elvis's music rights. The catalog of songs and recordings is a valuable asset, and decisions about licensing and releasing previously unheard material can be tricky. But by carefully managing these rights, the estate has kept Elvis's music accessible and profitable, ensuring that the king's voice never fades. In the end, Elvis's impact on music and culture is undeniable. He was a pioneer who broke barriers and created a legacy that still resonates today. Graceland stands as a testament to his life, a place where fans can come to celebrate the king, remember his incredible journey, and feel the magic that made him a legend. And behind the scenes, the Presley family continues to protect and honor that legacy, making sure Elvis Presley remains a name that echoes through history. So, whether you're a die-hard fan or just someone curious about why Elvis Presley matters so much, understanding the story behind the music, the mansion, and the management gives you a deeper appreciation of a man who truly changed the world. Hold on before you go. Here is a point 2. Note, while Lisa Marie Presley was involved in managing the estate, during her ownership, the operational aspects of Graceland were handled by Elvis Presley Enterprises, Incorporated, a company established in 1977. Lisa Marie served as chairperson until 2005, when she sold a majority stake in the company. Since then, the estate's day-to-day operations have been managed by various entities, with Riley Keough currently overseeing its affairs. Was Elvis a victim of fame, trapped in a system that chewed him up and spit him out? Or did he play a role in his own downfall by refusing help and hiding his struggles? Do you think Dr. Nick was doing the best he could, or was he complicit in enabling the king's decline?